Okay.
Hello, I'm Martin Kelley, Senior Editor of Friends Journal, and I have with me on video chat today Laura Magnani of the American Friends Service Committee San Francisco office. She is the director of the Healing Justice program. So thank you, Laura, for coming on with us here. And
Thank you.
Thanks. And Laura has an article in the current issue of Friends Journal on prisons, and it came from a talk that she gave at the French General Conference gathering this year. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about your work there with the AFSC in the prisons.
AFSC's been doing prison work really since its beginnings, which means almost 100 years. And Friends have really been interested in the issue from their inception, partly because so many Friends were thrown into prison when we first began. And so they had a direct experience of it that's been very, I think, important throughout the centuries, virtually. Because otherwise we might not be aware. These are systems that are housing so predominantly people of color and people at the bottom of the economic spectrum that it would be easy for a lot of Friends to not know what was going on there. But really, we've kept a presence up through AFSC, but also through AVP and PVS, that's the Prison Visitation Service, and the Alternatives to Violence Project,
Thank you.
for many years, and that's meant that we've kept our hand in the work.
Right. One of the things you talk about is something that more and more Friends are talking about, what's now being called the new Jim Crow. And of course, once upon a time, there was slavery, and slavery was abolished, but then somehow the system adapted and had Jim Crow laws, which prevented African Americans from really being equal, and those were finally abolished. Now we have what Michelle Alexander is calling the new Jim Crow. So, can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what kind of a concept that is?
Well, it's very subtle for one thing, so it's easy for people to not see how it's happening. But her thesis is that in a very kind of quiet and but subtle way, a variety of factors came into play a few decades ago where the drug laws in particular were used to move a lot of people of color particularly into prisons as a way of supposedly dealing with drugs. It was called the war on drugs, but it really didn't do anything to curb drug usage. But it did do a lot to incarcerate people. And so in effect, there's a de facto Jim Crow happening in the way that we administer our prison system and our criminal justice system as a whole. And all kinds of what would usually be checks on that system, like going to the Supreme Court and saying there's an unequal protections problem here. A lot of those methods have been cut off kind of systematically by decisions that have gotten made. So what we end up with is this highly discriminatory set of practices. I mean, from the beginning, prisons have housed people of color disproportionately, but it has intensified, particularly with these drug laws.
Right. So what? So you touched a little bit on that Quakers have sort of long been doing prison work. How does what's currently happening build on that, and what are some things that Friends can do? Who are just maybe tuning into this issue now or want to get their meeting more involved in this. What kind of prison work is there for 21st century Friends to be engaged in?
Well, as I say, 21st century Friends are doing it in some respects already through the direct service work that's going on. But I was incredibly encouraged at Friends General Conference gathering this year that so many people wanted to be part of a national network. So we now have names for a national network of Friends across the country that people can sign on to by contacting AFSC. And we're going to try to figure out how to network those folks to do real advocacy, real work for change, because it's important to do direct service work, and that's how we get the information that we need. But then we have to take it to another level and think about how can policies change and how we can model a much more positive alternative to this system, which would look mostly like restorative justice, a healing system rather than a system based on violence and oppression.
Sure. Well, that sounds great. So, how can people get involved in this network and development here? Should they contact you? Should we give your email address?
They can contact me. Well, maybe I should say they should contact Lucy Duncan. Her name is easier than mine. So L. Duncan at afsc.org in Philadelphia and say you want to be part of the Criminal Justice Network. And this is just beginning to come together, so we're not sure what it's going to look like. And probably it will look like people doing different things in different states, because criminal justice law is state-driven primarily. And so we have to be attentive to what's on the ground and happening in different jurisdictions. But we also want to know best practices and what each other is doing.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I think that's about all the time we have for now, but thank you for joining us here, Laura, and we'll definitely have that contact information for Lucy Duncan in the Philadelphia office for friends who want to get involved. Any other sort of tips for getting involved that you want to leave us with?
That this is the best time in history we've really had to work on this issue. We really are seeing a tipping point historically, and people are tired of this binge on incarceration. So it's a really good time to get involved.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. And we'll direct people again to the issue in Friends Journal. It's the current September issue of Friends Journal, and the article that Laura has near the front here, Love in the Belly of the Beast. So it's online, so people can read it at friendsjournal.org. And of course, friends can always subscribe and get it, good articles like this every month. So thank you, Laura, for being on with us.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.